Hello, this is Tim Law with Playing It Forward Coaching, always encouraging your self-reliance. If you develop a good work ethic, chase that work ethic with good people skills, communication skills, always go the extra mile. You'll be amazed on what you can accomplish as far as your life's concerned. A big thank you to over 550 people that have subscribed to this channel, Playing It Forward Coaching. If you haven't already, please do so. I have a guy here with me who is been a longtime friend. We catch up to each other about once a decade. Should be more often than that. And a phenomenal wrestler, world champion, two-time NCAA champion, outstanding wrestler in the nationals for Syracuse University, my good friend Gene Mills. So Gene, welcome. Tell us about your story there, how you got started in the sport, and share it with us.
Well, I was introduced to wrestling as a freshman in high school. Basically, I fell in love with it because it challenged me every day. And, obviously there were some of the older, bigger, stronger guys were getting the best of me at the beginning, but it didn't take long to make sure I was paying them all back. So it was something I really enjoyed. So I got better and better.
So you only started as a freshman in high school, though. That's actually when I got started as well. And so obviously you made up for some time very, very quickly.
Well, I remember my freshman year, I lost by a point in the semifinals of the district tournament. And I remember having to sit there and watch the finals, and it just drove me insane, thinking I should be out there. So I kind of made a vow to myself that I was going to win the district tournament the following year. In Jersey, it's districts, regions, states. So I made a vow, and I worked out 7 days a week. And on Saturdays we'd go to tournaments, and it was awesome. I don't know. I enjoyed the journey that it took me through. And I can honestly say that I probably learned more through and from the sport of wrestling than I did in all my academic classes put together. And I'm 3 credits away from a CAS degree. So.
Oh, that's super. And obviously, I remember you wrestling there for Syracuse. You won the nationals in '79. You redshirted for '80. You're out in the Olympic team, and then '81 you came back and won, and then was outstanding wrestler in the nation. And the sad thing was with that '80 Olympic team, which had some tremendous guys on it, Lee Kemp, yourself, among others. Unfortunately, because of the Carter's boycott, you were not able to compete in those Olympics.
Yeah, that sucked, to say the least.
Yeah. Well, as hard as go ahead.
No, because I got to wrestle the Olympic champ 3 times. I got to wrestle the guys that were 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. And I got to beat the daylights out of them all before I pinned them all. And we didn't get to go. So it was really heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Knowing that I could have, on any given day, I could have won it easily. I mean, I beat him up before I pinned him all. So.
Yeah, and I remember, if my memory serves right, you wrestled in that Tbilisi tournament in Georgia in March of '80 and pinned all those guys. And that Tbilisi tournament, for people that aren't really familiar with it, is actually tougher than the Olympics, because my understanding is the Russians send their 10 best guys. The rest of the world sends an individual, and you pretty much pinned your way through that. Is that accurate?
Well, I pinned everybody but a world champ in the finals. So I was beating him 18-0 at the end of the first period, and they disqualified him second. But but otherwise, I pinned everybody else.
Sure.
And he would have got pinned if they didn't save him by disqualifying him for stalling.
Sure.
He wasn't used to getting hammered. He was always on the other end.
Have the world champion down 18-0, man. That's amazing for sure. What, Gene, what was the as far as your NCAA? I believe you were 4th, 3rd, 1st as far as the nationals were concerned. The NCAAs for Syracuse. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Any particular opponents that were, pretty challenging for you?
Well, like in my freshman year, I felt like I did good. I ended up taking 3rd. I ended up getting beat by the guy I ended up beating for 3rd, but he was a 5th year senior, returning from Iowa State, returning runner-up. Everybody knew who he was, and I was just a nobody freshman. And I remember saying something I shouldn't have said to the official, and I had a huge factor on the outcome of the match. But then I got to, wrestle the guy for third and beat him my sophomore year. I was ranked number 1, and I ended up getting into a car accident on a Saturday before the NCAAs, and then on Monday I was working out, and then my shoulders used to dislocate all the time. So I was getting thrown. I was getting ready to post, and I was like, oh, not again. So I pulled my arm in, and that kind of just totaled me. And I was supposed to be in the hospital for 10 days. And I had my AC joint was sticking out of my shoulder. My SC joint was sticking out of my chest. I had pulled cartilage in my ribs, broken ribs, punctured lung. And that's kind of what really set me back. But the car accident, I broke a finger and an ankle, big deal. Easy tape jobs, not a big deal. But when it was all said and done, I couldn't breathe. So when you puncture a lung, it's like you have severe asthma. It's like, and you can't move. It's more of this stuff. So it's the only tournament of my life I prayed not to get a pigtail. And it was the only tournament of my life I did get a pigtail. So I ended up having 8 matches that year. And I couldn't breathe. I was like in tears within 30 seconds of every match. I was in so much pain. But I finished the matches, one by one, and somehow took 4th. So in one way, I guess it was an accomplishment. But on the other hand, I was just kind of pissed off I wasn't healthy. So I could have performed on a much higher level.
Sure.
But as far as, tough matches, that really my only tough match I had my junior year, I wrestled another guy who was 43-0, and he had basically back then it was superior decision. It wasn't tech falls. So if you beat a guy by 15, it was a superior decision. And that guy was really good. He was Joe Gonzalez from Cal State Bakersfield.
Yeah, I remember
he
him.
was pretty much considered the best guy he was considered the best guy on his feet, in the country at any weight class. He was friggin' amazing. And I just so happened to be the best guy on top and bottom at any weight class. And we just happened to be the same weight class. So it went back and forth and back and forth, back and forth. And it was a good match. So, my senior year, I was pretty dominant, so there wasn't really anybody to give me a match. So, but I had fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And tell us a little bit about that pin record. You and Wade Chalice, and I know Wade not as well as I know you, but Wade and I have met before, and you guys had that that I don't know, rivalry or just a competition to see, because you came in after him, obviously, to see about the who would ultimately have the the NCAA pin record. Any comments or thoughts on that? I'm not trying to stir up any controversy here, that's for sure, because you're both great champions.
Yeah, no, he had the record of 106 pins in college, and I was called by a guy named Ron Good, who was a writer for Amateur Wrestling News. And he said, you realize if you pin 24 of your last 25 guys, that you could break the NCAA pin record. It's like, oh, I didn't know that. Meanwhile, I beat one guy 36-0, another guy 43-0. And, I'd beat some guys up that I could have pinned if I would have known. I didn't know that was a thing. So I pinned my first 23 guys. Then I got in the semifinals, and I beat the guy. Well, the scoreboard said 32 to 4. The score sheet said 30 to 4, and then on the wall bracket they wrote 28 to 4. But so I didn't pin the guy in the semis. So I had to pin the guy in the finals to make it 107. But when I wrestled in Orange Bowl Classic or whatever, there were 2 guys' names that we didn't know. So when Syracuse University sent in the thing, they said, okay, you have 105 pins. We don't know these 2 names. We can't do anything about it until we get their names. Well, it wasn't until years later that I found the wall chart, and I was like, oh, here's their names. Here's the times of the pins. They knew I pinned everybody pretty much, but they didn't know their names. So they couldn't make it official. By the time I got it to them, they were like, oh, well, they didn't, nobody kept any of the other stuff. So when it was all said and done, I had 107 pins of two guys' names that they didn't know at the time. I gave them those names. They forwarded it on to the NCAA, but I don't know. I've never seen anything in writing, so I have no idea. But
Yeah.
I had 107 pins.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. And, especially being a lightweight, wrestling at 118 and everything. I know you also won the Midlands Tournament at least one time that I can recall. Is that accurate too?
Yeah. I won it up at 145.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
So it was 142 plus 3 pound weight allowance. And the second day you got 2 more back then. And
Mhm.
yeah, that was fun. So,
Wrestling all the bigger guys for sure.
I like
Gene,
wrestling with the bigger guys.
what advice, I always like to gear this toward teens and young adults, and whether it's wrestling or just work ethic or whatever, what advice would you give to teens and young adults regarding the some of the life lessons you've learned?
Well, the one life lesson I learned is if there's one person you have to count on, it's yourself.
Mhm.
That's number one. I mean, you can't count on somebody else to do your job. And that there is no substitute for hard work. There's no shortcut to success. I mean, you've got to earn that right to succeed. So when it's all said and done, you've got to work your ass off. You can't be cheating yourself.
Mhm.
And if you do, I mean, the results are going to speak for itself. So you don't even have to say a word.
Sure. No, very, very well said. But Gene, this has been fantastic. Can you hang for a minute or two after we get finished here?
Sure.
Great. Any last second thoughts?
No, just, wrestling changed my life in a huge way. And I'm forever indebted to the sport of wrestling for what it did for me.
Sure. Well, as the great Dan Gable said, and I think you'd certainly agree, Gene, he said, once you've done wrestling, everything else in life is easy compared to that. And I think that the great Dan
Without a
Gable
doubt.
sums it up.
Yep.
For sure.
Yep. I agree 200%.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you, Gene. Please hang on and I'll be right with you here.
All right.